My parents told me I was ungrateful for buying budget Black Friday gifts, while my sister got diamonds. So I returned everything and disappeared without warning. I'm a 20-year-old guy, and I've always felt like a shadow in my own home. Not the kind that protects or comforts, but the kind people step over without noticing. My older sister, Camille, was the golden child from the moment she took her first breath. Straight A's, pageant ribbons, prom queen, every little win was a full-blown celebration. The house lit up when she walked in. My parents practically glowed with pride just talking about her. And me? I got pats on the back when I brought home decent grades. When I won second place in a robotics competition, my dad said, "Well, maybe next year you'll get first." And that became the pattern. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough. Camille got a car at 17. I got a stern lecture about responsibility when I asked for bus fare. She missed curfew? She must have lost track of time. I was 5 minutes late? Do you even care about this family? My mom once forgot my birthday entirely. When I gently reminded her, she laughed and said, "Oh, you're not still hung up on that, are you?" I grew up learning to shrink myself, to lower my expectations, to clap for Camille and pretend I wasn't quietly breaking inside. But this year, something shifted. I'd been saving up from my campus job, late nights unloading shipments, weekends missed with friends, just to buy each of them something thoughtful for Black Friday. Nothing extravagant, just things I knew they'd appreciate, or at least I hoped they would. For once, I wanted to be seen, not pitied, not scolded, seen. Maybe, just maybe, they'd say, "You didn't have to, but thank you." I clung to that image like a lifeline. But the thing about lifelines is, sometimes they snap. And mine was about to. I knew I couldn't compete with Camille's diamonds or designer bags, but I wasn't trying to. I just wanted to give something real. So I got to work. Picked up every warehouse shift I could, graveyards, Sundays, holidays. My back ached, my hands blistered, but I kept going. I sold my old PS4, a couple of barely worn sneakers, even a stack of graphic novels I once swore I'd never part with. And when that still wasn't enough, I skipped lunches, ate ramen for dinner, told myself it was temporary. Every dollar had a purpose. I bought Dad a heated blanket because I heard him groaning about his back every morning when he thought no one was listening. Mom always paused when we passed this little chopper slicer thing at the mall, said it would make cooking easier, but she never bought it. So I did. Camille had mentioned once that she wanted simple, professional-looking earrings for her new internship, something elegant but not loud. I found a pair on sale that looked way more expensive than they were. I wrapped each one myself. Took my time with the bows, wrote personalized tags, even sketched tiny doodles on the corners. For a moment, I let myself feel proud. Not because of the money spent, but because I knew them. I paid attention. And that had to count for something, right? I kept imagining their faces, surprised, maybe a little touched. Maybe my dad would clap me on the shoulder and say, "You've grown up." Maybe my mom would smile like she used to, back when I was little and still believed I mattered. Maybe Camille would say thank you without that fake, polite tone. I needed this to mean something. Because if it didn't, then what did I mean to them? Camille didn't just walk through the door, she made an entrance. The kind that made the air shift. She had this sleek, silver car I'd never seen before. Her coat was belted and tailored, like something out of a Vogue editorial, and her heels clicked against the floor like applause. A quilted designer bag hung on her arm, and dangling from her ears were diamond teardrops that shimmered with every subtle head turn. She looked like the girl from the magazine covers Mom used to save. Only now, she was the cover. Mom gasped like she'd just seen a celebrity rushing in with arms wide. "Look at my beautiful girl." Dad gave her this grin I hadn't seen in months, all teeth and pride. "You've got that boss lady aura now," he said, chuckling. She laughed and twirled, her bracelet catching the light. I stood near the kitchen archway, invisible as always. Trying to sound casual, I asked, "So, new car?" Camille smiled. "Yeah, just a little upgrade. Gotta keep up the image." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know you were car shopping." Before she could answer, Mom chimed in. We helped. Her internship's in corporate fashion. Presentation matters in her field. She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like financing luxury for Camille was just common sense. That's when it hit me. The blanket I bought Dad suddenly felt cheap. The slicer I picked for Mom? Childish. The earrings for Camille? A joke. They were swimming in diamonds and I was bringing paper boats. I swallowed hard, nodded, and smiled. That fake, tight-lipped smile I'd perfected over the years. But inside, something broke. Something old. Something tired of pretending. The next morning, I laid out the gifts I'd wrapped with care. The paper was mismatched, whatever I could afford from the clearance bin, but each box had meaning. I even tied little handwritten notes to each one. My hands trembled slightly as I passed them around, trying to sound cheerful. Merry early Christmas, I said, forcing a grin. Camille sat cross-legged on the couch, her freshly manicured nails glinting as she tore into her box. She froze for half a second, then gave that soft, rehearsed smile. Oh, these are cute, she said, stretching out the word cute like it was a consolation prize. My mom leaned over to peek. Oh, how sweet, she murmured. Dad chuckled awkwardly, setting his gift on the coffee table. You shouldn't have wasted your money on us, son. You need to save. That word, wasted, cut deep. Mom unwrapped her slicer and blinked twice. Well, it's the thought that counts, she said, patting my shoulder like she was humoring a child who'd made a lopsided clay pot in art class. I laughed weakly, heart pounding. Glad you like them, I muttered, pretending I didn't hear the silence that followed. Then Camille cleared her throat and stood, practically glowing. Well, I got you both something too. She handed Dad a small velvet box. Inside were diamond cufflinks. Mom's box revealed a pearl necklace, the kind that made her eyes water instantly. Dad whistled. Wow, these must have cost a fortune. Mom clasped Camille's face and whispered, You're incredible. I sat there forgotten, my own wrapping paper crumpled in my lap. The heated blanket I'd saved for, the slicer, the earrings, they suddenly felt like trash. I wanted to shrink into the couch cushions. It wasn't just the gifts that were budget. It was me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled hum of voices coming from the living room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but one sentence made my stomach drop. He always has a chip on his shoulder. It was my mom, her voice sharp and tired. My dad chimed in. He takes everything so personally. You say good morning the wrong way and he sulks for a week. I sat up in bed, throat burning. So that's what they thought of me. Not someone trying, not someone hurting. Just a moody inconvenience. I didn't even get a chance to gather my thoughts before Mom knocked, then pushed the door open without waiting. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed. We need to talk, she said, like she was preparing to discipline a child. I heard you, I said quietly. She didn't flinch. Well, then maybe you should hear this too. You're always making us feel like we failed you. That's not fair, I blinked. I just wanted to do something nice for you guys. The gifts. We didn't ask you to buy us anything, she snapped, cutting me off. You always act like some kind of martyr, like we owe you applause for basic kindness. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I felt like I was drowning in invisible water. I'm not mad you bought the gifts, she added, voice suddenly calm. I'm mad you think they give you the right to judge us. I looked at her and asked, Do you even know why I picked what I picked? She didn't answer. Just turned around and said over her shoulder, You're ungrateful, you know that? Then she shut the door. And I was alone again, this time with proof. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my desk, hitting the pile of receipts I'd tossed there last night. I stared at them like they were evidence in a case I'd already lost. The total at the bottom, weeks of work, missed meals, aching muscles, all of it. For nothing. Not a single thing for myself. Just proof that I'd tried, again, and failed to matter. I picked one up, the edges wrinkled from my sweaty hands. The numbers blurred as I replayed Mom's words in my head. Martyr, ungrateful, too sensitive. Each one felt like a nail in a coffin labeled my fault. I'd heard variations of those words my whole life. When Camille forgot my birthday. Don't make it about you. When I got into my college of choice on a small scholarship. You're lucky we're helping at all. When I called home to say I missed them. You sound needy, son. It all came crashing down like a slow-motion avalanche. Camille was praised for breathing right. I was blamed for existing wrong. She failed? She's under pressure. I failed? What's your excuse this time? I sank into the chair, gripping the receipt until it tore. For years, I thought, if I just worked harder, if I kept my head down, didn't complain, stayed humble, they'd see me. But I was never invisible because I was quiet. I was invisible because that's how they preferred me. That's when it hit me. Nothing I ever do will be enough. Not because I'm not trying, but because they don't want it to be. Their balance only works if I'm beneath her. I looked around my room, plain, dim, and mine. And for the first time, I didn't want to fix it. I wanted to leave it. By 3 a.m., the house was silent, just the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the hallway clock. I sat on my bed, staring at the pile of gifts still neatly stacked in the corner. The ribbon on Mom's slicer had come loose, and Camille's earrings still glimmered faintly under the lamp. It felt like they were mocking me, reminders of how easily love could be mistaken for charity. So I started packing. One by one, I slid each box into a grocery bag, careful not to make a sound. The sound of the zipper on my jacket echoed louder than I expected. My heart raced, but my hands were steady. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it for closure. The streets were empty when I drove out. Every red light felt like a checkpoint asking, "Are you sure?" I was. The first store clerk looked at me weird when I asked to return the items. "Holiday remorse?" she joked. I just nodded. Another clerk sighed when I handed her the earrings. "These are beautiful," she said softly. "They weren't the right fit," I replied. It took 3 hours, 4 receipts, and a drained tank of gas, but I got most of it back. Some in cash, some in store credit. I didn't care about the amount. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming something. My effort, my time, my dignity. As I drove back, the early winter sun started to rise. I parked outside the house and sat there for a long time, staring at the front door that had never really felt like mine. Then I whispered to myself, "No drama. No warning. Just gone." And I meant every word. I was almost out the door. My bag was packed, my plan was set, and I just wanted to slip away quietly. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. As I passed the kitchen, I heard Camille's voice, low and amused. "The kind of tone she used when gossiping with her friends. Yeah." "He really thought cheap Amazon gifts would impress them," she said, followed by a sharp laugh. "He's so desperate for attention, it's honestly pathetic." I froze. My breath caught mid-chest. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard. But then she added, "Mom felt so bad for him, she almost pretended to like it." That sentence, it hollowed me out. I took a step back, gripping the wall to steady myself. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from realization. All those moments I told myself she didn't know how bad it felt to be compared to her? Lies, she knew. She'd always known. And she enjoyed it. There was laughter on the other end of the line, probably one of her friends. Camille said, "He's always been jealous. It's not my fault I'm the one they're proud of." Something in me just snapped. It wasn't rage or hate, it was clarity. Every sarcastic smirk, every fake apology, every "you're overreacting" from my parents, it all made sense now. She wasn't just the favorite, she was their weapon, and I was the target. That night, I didn't just pack my things. I packed away every illusion I'd ever had about family, about fairness, about being enough. When I walked out the door, it wasn't an escape. It was an awakening. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry, scream, or second guess. I just moved. Quiet, focused, like someone walking out of a burning house without looking back. At dawn, I wrote a note on a ripped piece of printer paper. "Thanks for everything. I need space. No explanation, no drama. Just those words, and I placed it right in the center of the kitchen counter. where Mom always laid out the holiday pie, like some kind of shrine. I packed my duffel bag with what mattered: clothes, my laptop, the leftover store credit cards, my journal, and an old keychain from freshman year. The rest I didn't care. I left the room neat, bed made, closet closed, like I'd never lived there at all. My backup plan was already set in motion. A friend from high school, Jonah, had messaged me a few weeks back. Said his roommate dropped out mid-semester and they had a spare room near campus. It wasn't much, but it was mine now. I texted him once. "Still good for tonight?" He replied within seconds. Doors open, beds made. I turned off Find My iPhone. Blocked Mom, blocked Dad, blocked Camille. Deleted the family group chat without reading it. No goodbyes. No explanation. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of asking why. When I stepped outside, the cold morning air hit my face like a baptism. The sky was soft pink and the street was still. I slid into my car, duffel tossed in the back, and drove off with no music, no map. I just drove. And for the first time in years, I felt light. The first few days in Jonah's place felt like stepping into another life. There were no guilt trips echoing down the hallway. No sarcastic comments. No walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong word would ignite some passive-aggressive explosion. I made my own coffee. I left dishes in the sink without being called lazy. I even left my door open while I napped because, for once, I didn't feel the need to hide. But peace has a funny way of inviting ghosts. By day 4, the calls started. Unknown numbers. Then familiar ones, my uncle, my mom's cousin, even my old Sunday school teacher, all asking the same thing with different flavors of guilt. Your mom is worried sick. She hasn't been eating. Why would you do this to them? You know they love you, right? Love, that word again. Wielded like a weapon. Not one of them asked what I was feeling. Not one said, I heard what they did was hurtful. They didn't care about my side. They cared about the discomfort my absence created. At night, I started to wonder if I had overreacted. Maybe it really was just me being too sensitive. Maybe I should have just stayed quiet, smiled through it like always. I caught myself scrolling through old pictures, birthdays where I wasn't in the frame. Holidays where I was behind the camera. Every happy family photo felt like a lie I had agreed to pose for. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the unblock button. Just once, just to check in. But then I remembered Camille's laugh. Mom's silence. Dad's shrug. I put the phone down and sat with the fear. Because sometimes freedom is terrifying. It didn't take long for the narrative to shift. I hadn't even been gone a full week when Camille's post hit Facebook. A perfectly filtered picture of her smiling at the Thanksgiving table captioned with, "Family should mean everything." Some people forget that when they're bitter. The comments flooded in. You're such a strong woman. Ignore the negativity, queen. Jealousy is ugly on others. I wasn't named, but I didn't have to be. Then came the message from Jonah. Hey, your mom just messaged me. She asked if you're using drugs? I laughed out loud. A sharp, bitter sound that scared even me. By the next day, my dad had sent me an email. Subject line, "Get it together." Inside, he wrote, "Running away makes you look weak. Whatever point you think you're making, you're embarrassing yourself. And us." That was it. No, "Are you okay?" No, "We miss you." Just shame, served cold. And that's when it clicked. They weren't heartbroken. They weren't confused or reflective or willing to listen. They were furious because I left the stage. Because I stopped playing the role they cast me in. And without me there to blame, they had no villain to point to. This wasn't grief. It was damage control. They couldn't manipulate me anymore. So they tried to manipulate everyone else. For the first time, I realized my silence was power, and they were terrified of it. I told myself I didn't care about birthdays anymore. That I didn't expect anything. But when the day arrived, there was still this quiet hope in me, this stubborn little flicker that maybe someone would reach out. By noon, the silence was deafening. No text from Mom, no email from Dad, no half-hearted message from Camille pretending we were still siblings. Not even a sarcastic meme from a distant cousin. I checked my phone more times than I'd admit. Eventually, I turned it off and shoved it in a drawer. That night, I went to the corner store and bought myself a slice of cheap chocolate cake in a plastic clamshell. It was lopsided and already starting to dry at the edges. I stuck a single candle in it, a bent one I found in Jonah's junk drawer, and lit it with a shaky hand. I didn't sing. I didn't smile. I just stared at the tiny flame and made a wish I hadn't dared to say out loud before. I wish I could stop hurting. Then I blew it out, and I cried. Harder than I ever had. Not because they forgot, but because I finally accepted that they didn't forget. They chose not to care. I wasn't mourning the missed texts or the silence. I was mourning the years I spent trying to be good enough for people who never intended to see me. I cried for the boy who believed love was something you had to earn. Who thought if he tried hard enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, he'd matter. That night, I didn't hit send on a single message. But I did write something in my journal. Today, I buried the version of me who begged for crumbs. Healing didn't come all at once. It crept in quietly, like sunlight through old blinds, until one day I realized I wasn't holding my breath anymore. I picked up a side gig fixing busted laptops for other students. Nothing fancy, but enough to buy a secondhand microwave and stock it with frozen meals that didn't taste like shame. I decorated my corner of Jonah's apartment with thrift store. Posters and sticky notes of quotes that made me feel like I was building a life, even if it was just in pencil for now. I started journaling every night. Not for anyone else, just for me. Some pages were angry, some were empty, some just said, I got through today. One night, Jonah looked over at me while we were both working and said, You laugh more now. That hit me harder than any insult ever had because it was true. My laugh wasn't performative or tight with tension. It was real, messy, loud, mine. I wasn't healed. I still woke up some nights bracing for a text from my dad or a backhanded comment from my mom. But those moments passed faster now. I started celebrating the little things. Buying my own groceries, fixing my own sink, paying rent on time, having dinner alone without feeling lonely. Every small win felt like rebellion. Every peaceful night was a quiet revolution. They used to call me ungrateful. Now, I was finally learning how to be grateful. Not for them, but for me. And that gratitude? It didn't come with conditions. It came in a cream-colored envelope, the kind Mom always used for holiday cards. No return address, just my name scrawled in her cursive. I held it for a minute before opening it, like it might burn or bite. Part of me thought, maybe this is it. Maybe she finally gets it. Maybe there's an apology inside. But the first line told me everything I needed to know. We still love you, but you owe us a conversation. The rest was a laundry list of their so-called sacrifices. We fed you, clothed you, paid for school events. We let you stay under our roof rent-free. We tolerated your moods. Every line dripped with obligation, not a single sentence about how they made me feel small, not one word about the years of favoritism, manipulation, or emotional starvation. There was no, I'm sorry. No, we miss you. Just a quiet, condescending reminder that I was in their debt. At the end, she wrote, You're still our son. Don't let pride ruin that. I folded the letter in half once, then again, and again, until it was a tight little square that fit neatly into the trash. Love isn't a transaction. It isn't earned by keeping score or returned gifts or pretending nothing ever hurt. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because I didn't need to spend another second explaining why I walked away from a room where I was never truly invited to speak. My silence wasn't anger. It was closure. And sometimes silence is the loudest thing you'll ever say. It started with a late-night impulse. I couldn't sleep, memories circling like vultures, so I opened a blank text box on a forum I used to lurk on. The title came out before I even thought about it. I was the budget son in a family that only valued diamonds. I didn't use names, no locations, just the raw truth, start to finish. How I grew up invisible. How Camille sparkled while I dimmed myself to survive. How I gave and gave until I finally gave up. I hit post and closed my laptop, half expecting silence. maybe even mockery. But when I checked the next morning, my inbox was full. Comments, messages, people pouring their hearts out. Same here. I could have written this. Golden child syndrome is real and it hurts. For the first time, I realized I wasn't some broken outlier. I was part of a quiet, aching club, filled with scapegoats, second-place sons, daughters erased in favor of appearances. Every reply felt like a stitch in something I didn't know needed mending. I wasn't screaming into the void anymore. I was being heard, so I kept writing, kept sharing, not for revenge, not for pity, but because naming the pain made it smaller. And giving it shape made me feel whole. I was reclaiming the narrative they tried to write for me. No longer the ungrateful child, no longer the bitter ghost in the family portrait. I was becoming the author of my own story, one sentence at a time. Last week, I stood at the post office with a plain white envelope in my hand and a decision that had been simmering for months. I didn't write a letter. I didn't include a picture or a note or even a return address. Just a single folded piece of paper. The receipt. From the store where I had returned their gifts, the heated blanket, the kitchen slicer, the earrings Camille smirked at, each one refunded. Account credited. Time reclaimed. I circled the final refund amount with a red pen. Then just below it, in clean black ink, I wrote 3 words. Here's your gratitude. No more begging to be appreciated. No more twisting myself into someone they could be proud of. It wasn't revenge. It was release. A full stop on a sentence they kept trying to rewrite. I dropped the envelope in the slot and walked out into the cool evening air. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel bitter. I felt clear. Like a window that had finally been wiped clean after years of fog. I still have bad days. Still wrestle with guilt, with the question of whether I walked away too soon or not soon enough. Healing isn't a straight line, but I know this. I am no longer their scapegoat, no longer their backup plan, no longer a budget version of the son they wish they had. I'm not healed yet, but I'm free. And freedom, it turns out, is worth far more than anything I ever gave them.